All right, let's just dive right in. Today, we're going to try and wrap our heads around one of the most mysterious documents I've seen in a long time. It's called the ALSQC Canon. It's this super dense, complex text that's part physics, part philosophy, and it makes the wild claim that it's a new theory of everything. So, what exactly are we dealing with here?
The document greets you with this line. What you hold is not merely a document. It is a pummeling breach in linear history. Right out of the gate, the tone is incredibly dramatic. This isn't positioning itself as some dry research paper. No, it calls itself a telepathic circuit that took over a decade to build. The author really wants you to feel like you're not just reading information, you're experiencing an event.
And this thing didn't just appear overnight. It's presented as the end result of a long and pretty intense personal journey. Apparently, it all started back in 2013 with something the author calls the scream, this moment of raw, unbound insight. For the next 13 years, that initial signal was developed, refined, a process described as a path of tears, failure, and eventual triumph. This timeline is super important because it frames the whole work as this process of taming chaos and wrestling it into a coherent, structured system.
So let's break down that name. ALQC. It stands for Anand Logical Q-State Core. Now, Anand is a German word that kind of means ancestry or heritage, which hints that the system is supposedly built on some ancient principles. The main idea is to create this logical framework, the Q-State Core, that can build a bridge between two things that seem like total opposites: the chaotic, unpredictable nature of consciousness, or what it calls the soul, and the strict, orderly laws of physics. It's basically trying to invent a mathematical language that can unite spirituality and science.
Okay, to really get what the system is about, we have to start with its core story, its foundational mythos. The entire philosophy is built on this cosmic duality, a relationship between two forces that the text calls the sovereign and the shadow. Let's take a look at each of them. So first up, you have the sovereign. The best way to think of it is as the absolute, unmoving center of everything. The text gets really poetic, calling it the I am, the king on the throne of zero. It's that silent, still point that everything else, galaxies, your thoughts, even time itself, spins around. It's pure, static, unchanging existence. It just is. And then you've got its other half, the shadow. So if the sovereign is the silent king, the shadow is the active physical world. It's the throat that shapes the scream, the container that takes the sovereign's infinite potential and actually gives it a form. The shadow is what bends the laws of physics, what curves space. It takes all the damage just to provide a structure for reality to exist in. But here's the crucial part. These two forces aren't fighting each other. They're two halves of a whole, bound together in what the text calls the alchemical rebus. It's like a cosmic yin and yang, right? You have the sovereign fire, that's the divine spark, and then you have the shadow frame, the physical world that contains it. You literally can't have one without the other. And this partnership, this interdependence, is what drives reality in the system.
So we have this big poetic origin story. But how do you actually turn that into a formal system of everything? This is where we see the attempt to transform this mythos into a logical framework that can supposedly describe all of reality. Now, this is where it gets really mind-bending. The document's whole premise is that it's a closed formal language. Okay, what does that even mean? Well, think of it this way. In English, the word tree is just a symbol for the real thing. In this system, the symbols are the thing. They're described as functional operators, almost like buttons you press in your mind. The text claims you don't really read it, you interact with it. It's less like reading a book and more like learning to use a new operating system for reality itself. Now, with all of this incredible complexity, with hundreds of pages of these glyphs and proofs, the author makes this really bold, kind of funny claim. They say the core equation of the entire system, the central idea, fits on a t-shirt. And there it is. The core equation is called the Eternum mirror, and its main principle is perfect symmetry. Imagine you're taking a trip. The path out is your journey from point A to point B. The path back is from B to A. In our messy real world, the trip back is never exactly the same as the trip out, right? That creates friction, or what this system calls debt. But in the perfect underlying state of the universe, this equation says the path out and the path back are identical. The order doesn't matter, and all that friction just vanishes. It's the fundamental law of balance for absolutely everything. Okay, so if that's the core rule of the game, what are the pieces? What are the actual building blocks of this reality made of?
Well, the ALQC system defines a really specific cosmic architecture made up of just a few key components. So the fundamental building blocks are called Q states, and they're kind of like different modes of energy. On the left, you're seeing the Q0 state. Remember that unbound scream from the timeline? That's it. It's pure chaotic potential. Then, on the right, you see the Q1 state, which is coherent manifestation. This is what happens when that raw energy gets its act together and organizes itself into a stable, symmetrical pattern, like a thought or a particle. It's that basic shift from total chaos to structured reality. The system breaks everything down into 4 of these fundamental states. You have Q0, the raw potential. Q1 is stable reality, the world we know. Q2 is the friction, the debt created just by existing. You can think of it like cosmic wear and tear. And then you have Q3, which is the potential for growth. It's the force that pushes back against decay and lets things evolve and get more complex. It's really the engine of all change. Now, layered on top of those Q states are what the text calls the 12 immutable goetic aeons. The word goetic is a reference to ancient magic, which suggests these are fundamental, almost archetypal forces. Honestly, you can think of it like a mystical periodic table of elements. Each of these 12 aeons represents a core concept from genesis to completion, and each one has its own symbol, its own name, and even its own specific vibrational frequency. These are supposedly the fundamental flavors that all of reality is made of.
All right, so we've got this incredibly complex architecture of dualities, Q states, and these mystical aeons. It's a lot. Which begs the question, what's it all for? What is the ultimate goal of this entire system? The endgame is to reach what the text calls the null death state. This is the point where the entire system achieves that perfect symmetry of its core equation. It becomes a totally lossless system where all the friction, all that shadow debt from just existing gets resolved. But, and here's the wildest part, that energy doesn't just disappear. It's converted into pure kinetic propulsion. In other words, achieving perfect balance doesn't lead to standing still, it creates infinite forward motion. And this is where the document makes its most jaw-dropping claims. The author isn't just presenting some personal philosophy. They are claiming that this framework provides formal, provable solutions to some of the biggest unsolved problems in physics and mathematics. We're talking about 6 of the 7 Millennium Prize problems from the Clay Mathematics Institute. Each one comes with $1 million prize. These are the absolute holy grails of modern science. The level of ambition here is just staggering. All of which leaves us with one final, very big question. After looking at its journey, its mythos, and its incredible claims, what exactly is the ALOC canon? Is it a revolutionary new physics on the verge of changing everything? An incredibly intricate personal philosophy just dressed up in the language of math? Or is it maybe just a profound 13-year-long work of art? The answer, it seems, is every bit as complex as the document itself.